Rarely used part of the 14th Amendment in their new article of impeachment against President Trump. It's Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It prevents any person who has engaged or supported an insurrection or rebellion against the United States from holding public office. Now, Nancy Pelosi asked her colleagues on Sunday for their views on this part of the Constitution. And we wanted to ask a constitutional expert ourselves, so let's welcome in now attorney and legal analyst American Benno. Amir, great to see you again.
Great to see you too. Thanks for having me.
So, I'm not a lawyer, obviously. I get a little skeptical, though, anytime members of Congress start digging off and dusting off provisions from Reconstruction to be used here in 2021. Obviously, this is a stretch. And one of the things that concerns me is that so many of the members of the media, both on the right and left, are spending time talking about this impeachment today, when in the end, it's really not going to mean anything long term.
Yeah, well, first of all, Nancy Pelosi and her Democratic colleagues are completely wrong. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says that if a person was a senator or a representative in the House or held an appointed office like an ambassadorship or a judgeship, and during the time that they held that office, they participated in or aided an insurrection, then they are disqualified from running again for that particular position. It specifically doesn't mention the presidency. So if those people wanted to run for president, they could. If the president said something that was considered to be supporting an insurrection, he or she could still run again. So the 14th Amendment doesn't provide any legal basis like Nancy Pelosi says. And like you said, impeachment here, there's no chance that the Senate's going to act on this before Donald Trump is out of office. And there's a split in constitutional thought as to whether or not the Senate even has jurisdiction to try an impeachment of an ex-president, of a private citizen. Yeah. And so what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are doing, one thing after another, is attacking the Constitution. The very notion that what President Trump said when he was addressing his supporters on the ellipse on January 6th would amount to incitement or causing an insurrection that he was the driving force behind is just fanciful. I mean, there's a clear United States Supreme Court decision that says what is protected First Amendment speech and what becomes incitement to a riot. And this falls so far short of that standard that she is attacking the First Amendment, she's attacking the impeachment clause, she's attacking the 14th Amendment, all of these provisions, the 25th Amendment. And that is really the assault on democracy that we should be talking about here.
Yeah, and this concerns me too, because people are attacking Mo Brooks for things he said, and look, there's who's to say there's going to be some consequences for this. We're already starting to see this with Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz losing donors. But when it comes to words that were said, they're trying to go after President Trump for incitement. When he called on his supporters to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. That doesn't sound like incitement. So anytime like a coach tells his team, let's go out there and give them hell, or we're going to fight, we're not going to give up, they could be on the hook for incitement. And, that's the real, importance and the fragility of the First Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. The standard here under the Supreme Court's decisions says that the language has to be directed towards causing imminent lawless action, and it has to be likely to cause that. By simply trying to rile people up and saying, let's zealously fight, but not in the physical sense, in the figurative sense, that's nothing that the Democrats haven't done themselves. I mean, we've seen worse than that from Maxine Waters calling on Democrats to accost Trump administration officials at restaurants. We saw Ayanna Pressley calling for continued protest and violence in the streets. The same thing with Kamala Harris.
Well, maybe if they push this forward, Amir, they would be calling for their own demise as well, because like you mentioned, there are plenty of examples by their definition of inciting violence here. Now, I want to ask you, we got a minute 30 left here. I want to talk about this lawsuit. Parler is suing Amazon. And I want to talk about the difference here, because Amazon really is a gatekeeper to the internet. For Parler to be locked out of Amazon, there has to be a real neutral aspect to this, because Amazon really is one of the biggest monopolies when it comes to server space here. And I think they're playing with fire, are they not?
They certainly are, for two reasons. One, antitrust. Antitrust is the legal term that says let's bust up a monopoly, some company that has now occupied the entire space and is not allowing competition to flourish. And that's what Amazon is doing here by with Twitter, by agreeing with Twitter to knock out a competitor, a growing competitor, and one who was set to really explode in growth, given that Twitter had terminated President Trump's account and he was going over to Parler. They were set to see the numbers of Parler subscribers skyrocket. And right when it was time to do that, lo and behold, Amazon says you can't use our server space. That kind of agreement between two huge entities to stop a third one from growing is classic antitrust, classic monopoly. And that's why this lawsuit is so important. The other way that I think Twitter and Amazon have put themselves at risk is that we've heard a lot about something called Section 230, which gives these platforms an immunity from lawsuit. Now, they have the ability to sort of moderate what content is on their sites as long as, this is under the statute,
right,
as long as the content they're moderating has to do with obscenity or violence.
Right. If Lin Wood is calling for people to shoot, or he's hinting at the idea that Mike Pence should be shot, clearly Parler has the right to take that stuff down. But what they don't have to preemptively censor somebody on their site. And this is what's so scary about this. We agree, you never want to see the government crack down on private corporations, but sometimes it's so obscene, as is the case here, there has to be something done. We got to run, Amir. This was a great conversation. We look forward to talking to you.